Hello, my love. Welcome back to the Aroused Podcast for another episode. And if you're new around here, welcome. June is Pride Month, and today is one of few episodes that I am recording in the special occasion of Pride Month to educate and bring awareness. So to start off, I'm going to be talking about labels and what they mean. Let's get into it. Warning: the following presentation is intended for mature audiences. It includes stigma topics like sex, addictions, mental illness, adult dialogue, and strong language. Viewer discretion is advised. Okay, my love. So I have quite a few definitions that I'm going to be going through, and I took this from an LGBTQ glossary, and I will be including the link in the show notes if you want to go over there and check any of these out. Look at the rest of the list. I'm not going over every single one in there, but I'm going over some more common terms, ones that I believe that everyone should know. I'm not going to go over every one of them, not that all of them aren't important, but these are some that people that aren't in the LGBTQ plus community should know. And even those that are in the community, as myself being bisexual, these are important to know as well. So first, number one is allies. So someone who advocates for and supports members of a community other than their own, reaching others across differences to achieve mutual goals. A person who may not share the sexual orientation or gender identity of LGBTQ+, but who supports and honors sexual and gender diversity and challenges homophobic, transphobic, and heterosexist remarks, behaviors, institutions, and systems. Pretty much if you're straight and you support the LGBTQ plus community, then you are an ally. Asexual, someone who does not experience sexual attraction towards other people and who identifies as asexual. They may still have romantic, emotional, affectional, or relational attractions to other people. This is where, like it says, they don't experience sexual attraction. Bisexual. Hi! A person who experiences sexual, romantic, physical, and or spiritual attraction to people of their own gender as well as another gender. So me being bisexual, I'm attracted to both men and women, attracted to them in many different ways, sexually, romantically, physically, spiritually. And that can be for men as well. They can be attracted to other men and women. Cisgender, a person whose gender identity is aligned to what gender or sex they were assigned at birth. So, and this is like a non-trans person. So I am cisgender. I agree that I was born a woman, and I agree that I'm a woman. I'm a female. So I am cisgender. Coming out, the process of recognizing and disclosing one's sexual orientation or gender identity to other people. Often incorrectly thought to be a one-time event, this is a lifelong and sometimes daily process. And this is not to be confused with outing, because that's different, and I'm going to go over that later on because this is alphabetical. Crossdresser, a person who wears clothing opposite of their gender for comfort, pleasure, or fun. It carries no implication of sexual orientation. Has replaced the term transvestite. So in another episode, I'm going to be talking about Marsha P. Johnson, and back in the 70s and the 80s, they were referring to them as transvestites, and that word has been replaced now. Drag queen, a person who consciously performs femininity, usually in a show or theater setting, presenting an exaggerated form of feminine expression, oftentimes done by a man, often confused with transsexual or transvestite. Drag may be performed as a political comment on gender, as parody, or simply as entertainment. Drag performance does not indicate sexuality, gender identity, or sex identity. Gender fluid is a gender identity where a person identifies as 1. Neither or both female and male, 2. Experiences a range of femaleness and maleness with a denoted movement of or flow between genders, 3. Consistently expresses their gender identity outside of the gender binary. So FTM is a term for a transgender individual who was assigned female at birth and currently identifies as a man. So female to man. Gay, a term used to describe a man who is attracted to men, but often used and embraced by women to describe their same-sex relationships as well. I remember when gay was used as an equivalent to happy when I was very young in elementary school. We would say, "Oh, I'm so gay, I'm so gay." And we were referring to it as happy. And it's really interesting looking back at my childhood and remembering that. Gender affirming surgery. It's a surgical procedure that alters or changes the physical sex characteristics in order to better express a person's gender identity. This may include removal of the breasts, augmentation of the chest, or reconstruction of genitals. Also called gender confirming surgery or sex reassignment surgery. Preferred term to sex change surgery. Gender binary. The idea that there are only two genders, man or male and female and woman, and is based on physical anatomy at birth. Along with this comes the idea that people must strictly adhere to culturally acceptable behavior for men or boys and women and girls. For example, men and boys are to exhibit masculine gender presentation, behaviors, and social roles, and women are to exhibit feminine gender presentation, behaviors, and social roles. Gender dysphoria. The description of emotional or mental dissonance, so this is like a lack of harmony between one's desired concept of their body and what their body actually is, especially in reference to body parts, features that do not align or promote to one's gender identity. 2, it's also a term used in psychiatry to refer to the incongruence between an individual's assigned birth sex and their gender identity, which marked dissociation from one's physical body. Gender neutral or gender inclusive, used to denote a unisex or all gender inclusive space, language, etc. So example is, a gender-neutral bathroom is a bathroom open to people of any gender identity and expression. Actually, when I was at the University of Regina getting my degree, they actually put in a couple of these in one of the buildings. Genderqueer, a woman whose gender identity is neither man nor woman, is between or beyond genders, or is some combination of genders. Some genderqueer people identify under the transgender umbrella, while others do not. And we never assume. Heteroflexible, a person who is predominantly heterosexual but not exclusively so. Homoflexible is a person who is predominantly homosexual but not exclusively so. Homosexual, a medical definition for a person who is attracted to someone with the same gender, or literally biological sex they have. This is considered an offensive and stigmatizing term by many members of the queer community, often used incorrectly in place of lesbian or gay. Everyone has their own label that they like to be called, so it's always good to ask instead of assume. Hormones and hormone therapy is an administration of hormones to affect the development of one's secondary sex characteristics. Transgender persons who decide to undertake medical transition may use hormone therapy as part of that transition. Lesbian, a woman who is primarily sexual, emotional, and romantic orientation is towards people of the same gender. A woman who is attracted to women. MTF, a term for a transgender individual who was assigned male at birth and currently identifies as a woman, so male to female. Non-binary. So there's been a couple celebrities that have come out as non-binary. I know Demi Lovato is one of them. But this describes a gender identity that is neither female nor male. This gender identities that are outside of or beyond two traditional concepts of male or female. Outing. So this is something that I said earlier, not to be confused with coming out. So outing is exposing someone's sexual orientation as being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender to others without their permission. In sense of outing them may not be confused with coming out. So outing someone can have serious employment, economic, safety, religious repercussions in some situations. And this is a situation when the person, they haven't given their permission for someone to share this information. Similarly to Nikki Tutorials on YouTube, she was blackmailed in order to come out with her story of being transgender, rather than picking the time that was right for her to come out with her story. Pansexual, a person who experiences sexual, romantic, physical, and or spiritual attraction for members of all gender identities and expressions. Partner, gender-neutral term for a significant other, often used in the LGBTQ plus community. GLBT people may also use girlfriend or boyfriend, lover, roommate, life partner, wife or husband, or other terms when referring to their partners. Preferred gender pronoun. This is simply the pronoun or set of pronouns that an individual would like others to use when talking to or about that individual. I, you, it are what we call gender neutral or all gender, but she, her, he, and him are gendered. This can cause an issue for transgender and gender nonconforming people because others may not use the pronouns they prefer when speaking to them or about them. Some other preferred gender pronouns are them or they, and it's always a good idea to ask someone what their pronouns are if you don't know what they are. Pre-op, a trans-identified person who has not received gender-affirming or sexual reassignment surgery. This implies that the person does not intend to receive such surgical procedures. Post-op, a trans-identified person who has received gender-affirming surgery or sexual reassignment surgery. QTPOC and QTWOC is an abbreviation for queer and trans people of color and queer and trans women of color. These are rooted in the concept of intersectionality, which focuses on the intersections and interactions between various forms and systems of oppression, including racism, classism, heterosexism, patriarchy, religious oppression, and so on. A QTPOC framework attunes itself to the lives, challenges, and needs of people who experience these compounded and or interlocking oppressions. Queer, an umbrella term to refer to all LGBTQ plus people, also a political statement, as well as sexual orientation, which advocates breaking binary thinking and seeing both sexual orientation and gender identity as potentially fluid. Third gender, a person who does not identify with the traditional genders of man or woman, but identifies with another gender. The gender category available in societies that recognize 3 or more genders. For example, Native American Two-Spirit people, Haira in India, Kahonis in Thailand, and travestis in Brazil. Transgender, a term for people whose gender identity is different from their assigned sex at birth. Transitioning, the social, psychological, or mental process of transitioning from one gender to another. Gender transition is an individualized process and does not involve the same steps for everyone. Transition may include telling one's social support network, legally changing one's name or sex, therapeutic treatment with hormones, and possibly, though in not all instances, surgery. Trans man, a transgender individual who identifies as a man. Also female to man, which I talked about earlier. Transsexual, a person whose gender identity is different from their designated sex at birth and has taken steps of physical transition so that their body is congruent to both their gender identity and the conventional concept of sexually male and female bodies. Trans woman, a transgender individual who identifies as a woman, same as male to female, which I talked about earlier as well. And then two-spirit, so contemporary term chosen to describe Native American and Canadian First Nation people who identify with a third gender, implying a masculine and feminine spirit in one body. Dress is usually a mixture of male and female articles, and they are seen as a separate or third gender who have a distinct gender, social, spiritual role in their tribes. Man, that was a lot of information, and that's not even all of them in the glossary. So you can head over to the link in the show notes to go over the entire glossary if you wish, but those are some of the most common ones, and that's a really good place to start if you're new to the LGBTQ plus community and some labels that I really encourage you to educate yourself on. In my next episode for Pride Month, I'm going to be talking about Marsha Pay It No Mind Johnson and why she was such an important part of why Pride Month is even a thing, her influence on the LGBTQ plus community as a whole. I will see you in tomorrow's episode.